welcome back. I'm talking about the idea of the purification of the judiciary. This is one of the top issues that dominates all what is going on now in Egypt. Well, of course, after Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi held crisis talks with the country's top judges after the justice minister resigned over the demands by the Muslim Brotherhood. A lot of things are taking place, whether after the meetings of the Shura Council or the new draft law that is to be issued. A lot of things to be discussed here, and at the end we ask a question: who is going to take benefit of all what is going on here? Today we have Dr. Waleed Mustafa. He's a political analyst, and maybe we are going to ask him a lot of questions about such a crisis, if we can call it like this. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome, sir. And allow me to be a bit nostalgic. Let's go back in time since June. Since President Mohamed Morsi has taken power, we've seen a tug of war between the presidency and the judiciary. How can you read the developments so far?
Actually, we need to understand that the motive behind the law or the new law is to, let's say, I don't like to say this word, but taking revenge of the presidency from the judiciary. But I mean, reducing the age of pension, or the pension age till 60, after it was at 70, it means that there will be a big gap and immediate gap between the current status and the future status. Because you are talking about 3,000 judges at least, 3,000 judges.
Maybe here I want to ask a question. What is the relation between corruption and the age of judges?
Actually, this is a very big question.
This is the only thing after reading this draft law, and the first one was presented by Al Wasat Party.
Right.
And then another one was added with 3 more articles by the Muslim Brotherhood or the Freedom and Justice Party.
Right.
So all of them are talking about the purification. It comes, just as you mentioned, it has to do with getting rid of about 3,000 judges.
Right.
What is the relation between the age and corruption?
I mean, it's a very good question, but we need to understand that at least 1/3 of the judges now came from the police academy, or they are ex-officers, police officers, which means that they don't, I mean, I don't like to say a negative word, but it means that they are not fully aware of the law, and they are just working by experience, which cause a lot of problem and a lot of corruption too. Because I mean, corruption doesn't mean necessarily to be bribed or something like that, but I mean, not applying the proper law on time means also it's part of corruption. So this is a big problem. Like 1/3 of the judges from police background, it's really a big problem. And of course, laying off 3,000 judges at once is a big catastrophe, you know.
Is it even realistic though?
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, it's very critical time to lay off 3,000 Egyptian judges at once. It's a big move, and
especially after working for 40 or 50 years as a judge and really served the country. At the end, whenever anyone will ask him, he will say he just went out in the purification movement. Just
right, and
think about it.
Yes, right, you are. I mean, the time might be not fully proper, but they can lay out the judges on stages, like 1,000 now, 500 now, and 500 after 6 months, but not at once, because this will cause a big problem in courts and in general interest. And another point which is very important, that judges, when they work until 70, they are not healthy, or they are not well fit for their work. I mean, being a judge means that working at least 16 hours a day, you know, and at the age of 70 means that you are not healthy, fit to such a job. This is one point. Another more important point is the appointing their kids and appointing the relatives in the job. Of course, when you are working until 70, it means that you are opening gates and spaces
for your grandchildren.
But this is not limited to the judges. And let's talk about it more frankly. For example,
yes,
how many governors do we have more than 60 years old or something like this, or consultant, or
right. But when you are talking about judges specifically, you are talking about general interest. You are talking about the whole country. You are talking about the whole state. It's not just.
So you are with this draft law?
I'm partially, yes. I'm with that law. although we can have some modifications on, for example, we cannot lay out 3,000 judges at once. We must take it into stages. We must reduce the age from now. We must know, because when you are at 70 years old, you are also having authority. And authority and power and authority means a lot too, you know. It's not just money or just financial aid. It is a power. And being a judge means a lot. Meaning immunity. You are immune. You can, nobody can.
Yes, a
can
judge
ask you.
is a red line. Yes.
Right. And he's like a half goddess, you know. I mean, it is a big problem. I mean, and I mean, they also need to understand that there must be another kind of a place that you go when you have a problem with courts. I mean, imagine that the judge is working as a judge, and his son and his grandson and his nephew and his niece, and you have a problem with the judge. Where can you go? I mean, you cannot even make a complaint for any judge, because
This is not limited to the judges.
Yeah, I agree
Okay,
with you, ma'am. I agree with you.
complaining to his son.
Exactly.
But how do you read Ahmed Miki's resignation?
I mean, it's a good question, and that's a critical one too. I mean, Ahmed Miki, I would say that he got some observation and preservation for the law, but I think, I mean, just objecting by presenting your resignation is not a solution. I mean, every day someone of the consultants of the president are resigning out, or somebody is just taking off. I mean, it's not a solution. You must stay at your place and defend your point to the maximum limit until they ask you to leave. And if they ask you to leave, then you can say that they asked me to leave. You know, but every time you have a problem, then I quit. Now we disagree together, I leave the show and go away.
But maybe he did this in order to take away from some of the presidency's credibility, as a sort of a tactic, maybe.
Ma'am, I think a lot of people did the same, and nothing happened.
I was just going to say, he is not the only one who resigned.
Exactly.
So there is something going on that they do not agree.
Fine, stay and defend your point, because in your place you are defending other people's points, you know. So you must stay. You cannot just leave and go away like this. I mean, you must stay, think, talk, dialogue. I mean, this is what other civilized people are doing in other countries. I mean, you really must understand that quitting is not a solution. It is a negative violence. I call it negative violence, you know, because it is negative violence. I mean, why you quit? Why you are silent? Why don't you come with me and try to
Do you think
dialogue?
nowadays, during this critical period of time, do we need such negotiations or draft laws concerning the judges or judiciary in general? Because simply, if you are against, of course, all of us are against corruption, we can take some legal measures. If you discovered, for example, because corruption is everywhere, if you discovered, for example, or you have something against such a judge, you can take some legal measures. And you have this. According to the law, you can do this.
Yes, ma'am.
Why not to do this, or to work upon just working on that law, for example, away from moving on to a new draft law and discussions and having such problems with judiciary, which started, just as we mentioned, a long time ago.
Actually, you are right. You are right. And the current law of judges still have such points that if you disagree with a judge, you can go and make a complaint against him.
Appeal or something.
Or appeal, right? You are, or appeal, of course. But again, who will search the appeal? You know how many appeals are stored in drawers? Thousands. I personally had a problem with one of the judges, and my appeal was kept in drawer for more than 3 years, till now. Why? Because the person in charge is one
And
of the...
even now, people complain the same.
Yes,
with
but...
the new general attorney, for example.
But ma'am, the point is don't try to practice any negative violence like quitting. You must stay at your place and trying to defend your point. Why do I have to leave you? If I disagree with you now, do I have to leave the show and that's it? Or do I have to sit and talk with you and dialogue with you and see what's the problem and try to reach
No,
something?
now you're talking about the resignation, of course, but the idea of such a law, again, to my question, do you believe this is a suitable time for such an action?
Partially, yes.
Yes or no?
Yes, partially, yes.
We need it.
Yes, we do need it to like, I mean, we don't like corruption. Nobody, as you kindly said, ma'am, nobody,
Of course, yes.
Nobody like corruption. All of us need everything to be right and in place and everything. But I mean, we are objecting, or we might have some preservation on the way it is done, not on the idea itself. As you kindly said, the time is okay, but not in this way. not in laying out or laying off 3,000 judges at the same time by this. It's like a massacre, you know. It's like a massacre.
It's already, they called it a massacre.
It is a
the
massacre,
massacre of
yes.
judges.
Mohammed
Yes.
al-Baradei.
Muhammad Bara, yes, it is a massacre of judges, but I mean, again, everything must be done according to a system and according to a vision and according to a complete ideology.
Vision and ideology is exactly what
She
we've
took
been
my
lacking
word, yes.
everywhere.
Actually, this is Her Excellency. We always meet and disagree on these 2 points: vision and
Mission and
ideology.
vision.
Yes,
Vision
ma'am.
and vision.
Yes, I mean, I'm still calling for an ideology. We must have an ideology. We must have a vision, and this starts with a question. It's very simple, ma'am. I mean, it's very simple. We must start with a question. What do I need? How do I see Egypt within 5 years as a short-term planning? How do I see Egypt within 20 years as long-term planning? Like the monetary fund, the loan that we are talking about last time. I mean,
But before we delve into the IMF loan, it's interesting because, for example, the rehabilitation and the purification of the judiciary was one of the main aims of the revolution at the beginning.
Right.
But now we're seeing that many of the liberal parties are against what's going on, when in a sense this is a type of purification. How do you read this transition with regards to the liberal parties?
I mean, it's a question that needs a book to answer. But but I mean, because I mean, you have to take like 2 points, like the pros and cons, you know. So I mean, reading the situation means that we really need a reform, as Ms. Nashwa said. We really need a reform, but the reform must be done throughout a system, throughout an ideology, as you kindly said, ma'am.
Not
I mean,
so cutthroat.
exactly. I mean, you cannot come with an overnight and say, okay, I want to lay off 3,000 judges, and I want to do this reform in this way, in that way. I mean, you cannot do this. I mean, we must understand that everything must be done within a system, a complete system. It's not just a solution, because I mean, all of us have good solutions, but none of us has a complete system to function such solutions within. So we must understand that everything must be done on time and systematically, not just like I have a law or I have a draft and I need to do it for the sake of reform, only for the sake of reform. All of us need reform and all of us go for reform, but we are talking about procedures, the way it's done, not just like you have an attack on some people or specifically judges and say that you want purification or reform, you know.
Some people or some critics say that it is a sort of, just as you mentioned, revenge, and things will never settle down like this. For example, if you want to proceed, we must forget all, because talking about the old regime and all what is going on, Egypt belongs to the old regime. No one did not live the old regime, including the Muslim Brotherhood themselves. They were
Right.
part of the old regime. So now we have to move forward. We have to work. We have to forget about the past and just to activate law. So whoever can see corruption can work on it and just, as you mentioned, take the suitable measures to confront
Right.
corruption.
Right.
Do you say this is acceptable? Is this right or wrong? Instead of just thinking of the past, taking revenge of that person to be excluded, for example, that person is to be out.
I mean, of course, I mean, what you are saying is totally right. But again, who will do that? Of course, through an ideology, but again, through a complete establishment, an institution. I mean, you don't have now any institution that can do such a job. And the institutions of Egypt are not yet fully prepared to take this role out. And of course, the point is, who will do the law? Who will draft the law? Who will pass the law? Who will study and analyze the law? I mean, and of course, we have to talk about education, because corruption starts with education, with improper education. I mean, you have a big problem in education. The education itself must be reformed. The education itself.
But if you know that you are going to be punished, for example,
Yeah.
not like in the past, I think you will reevaluate and rethink about what you're going to do.
You are right, but again, you are talking about education. Who
I'm
will
talking
understand?
about law.
Who will do the law? Who will do the law? I mean, somebody who's well educated. You don't have such a measure that can pass such a law, and who will apply it? I mean, the problem
But
with
I want to steal from Nashwa's point, because I think it was very important, because we are so caught up in figures of the old regime, in this person and this person. Maybe we shouldn't be looking at the people, but rather the system of the old regime. So maybe the people, because you can't eliminate 3,000, you keep these people, but you change the system in itself. How can you change this system?
I mean, the move of reducing the pension time or the pension age is correct. I mean, nobody stays until 70 years old working 17 hours a day or 16 hours a day. And mentally, you cannot. Mentally and healthily, you cannot work 16 hours a day and judge neutrally and objectively on people. You know, I mean, the pension age is 60 is fine. But again, we are talking about procedures. We're talking about how can you do that, the right time.
How can we solve the judicial crisis?
I mean, Mom, it's a very critical question.
And then we'll vote you in.
Yes,
How can we solve it?
member.
Yes, I want to know how can we solve it.
I mean,
it looks like whenever we are just about to take a breath or just feel that we are about to relax,
we have
something happens.
Yes.
As if there is someone who is just sitting and waiting for us.
Right. I mean, of course, I mean, law is very respectful, and we are not missing laws. I mean, we have a lot of laws that can be applied, but the question, who will apply it? If the judges are doing a problem and are protesting against the presidency, who will apply the law? They themselves must be subjected to law. They must be subject, because they didn't object on other laws that passed by the Shura Council. Why they are objecting now to Shura Council studying the drafting the laws? You know, so they themselves must be subjected to law and must be convinced that 70 years old of service as a judge is not practically right. I mean, 60 is fine, but you have to lay off people or judges step by step, degree by degree. And in the same time, you must qualify other people to take their places, you know, on good grounds and good basis. I mean, you cannot just lay off 3,000 people and leave the courts empty of judges. You know, who will run the people's interests and people's rights? So you must consider such 2 points which are very important: qualifying other people, the second line of laws of judges, qualifying them, and laying off judges by stages. Like every 6 months, you take out 500, for example, or 300. And they must also change the education system, because imagine that medicine and engineering faculties take over 90% in high school level, and law school take 60 and 70% in high school. Can you imagine the paradox of the two things? I mean, how can you accept people of 60 or the lowest grade in high school level and taking medicine and engineering?
Right, now you are talking about education. I think if you are going to talk about it, we need different
episodes
and not segments to talk about education.
Right.
So I think we hope that such crisis can be solved. Dr. Waleed Mustafa, political analyst, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for being with us. And with that, we wrap up this segment of the show. But stay tuned for more coming up ahead.